The wind came early that morning, dry and sharp like everything else in Whetstone County. Fields of brittle grass bent without sound, and the frost that had crept in overnight clung stubbornly to the rails of the east paddock. Clay Brixton stood by the fence, cradling a chipped enamel mug, steam curling from his coffee and disappearing into the cold. He didn't look at the sunrise. He didn't look at the barns. He watched two horses standing in the far corner of the pen. The gray mare was blind. Her name was June, and she had gone sightless 2 years back after a nasty infection took hold. The vet said put her down. Clay said no. He had meant to sell her before that, but when her eyes clouded and her steps grew slow and careful, he just kept her, not out of pity. June didn't need it. She adjusted. She learned the shape of the paddock, the tilt of the wind, the smell of water. But mostly, she followed Dusty. Dusty was a stocky bay gelding with a crooked white stripe and a bad attitude for anyone not named June. He'd been broken early and hard, a working ranch horse all his life. But something had changed in him after the mare went blind. He followed her like a shadow, sometimes leading her, sometimes standing guard. If another horse tried to crowd her, he'd snap and bite like a wolf. It wasn't love, not the way people imagined it. It was loyalty, something deeper than instinct. And now Clay had sold them both. The Brixton Ranch was shutting down after 47 years. The debt was louder than his pride now. Equipment had already gone. Cattle, too. Only the horses remained, and the buyers were coming by noon. 2 separate ranchers, one from Fremont, the other from Riverton. Neither had wanted both. That was the point. Dusty was still useful. June was a burden. Clay sipped his coffee and didn't blink as the wind cut across his cheeks. Dusty stood pressed against June's side. His ears were relaxed. Hers flicked toward the sound of the rustling fence. She couldn't see him, but she knew he was there. Always. Inside the house, the phone rang. Probably one of the buyers confirming the pickup time. Clay didn't move. He watched June tilt her head as Dusty shifted. She took a step. He matched it. Another. He bumped her shoulder with his nose, gentle, guiding. They turned in slow, practiced arcs, a dance without music, each hoof print echoing years of routine. Clay set down the mug. By 10, the truck from Fremont rolled in. It was a 2-horse trailer, fresh paint, clean tires. The buyer was a younger man named Sutton. He had ranch hands with him, tall boys with calm hands and quick steps. They were there for Dusty. Just the gelding, Sutton said, looking past the paddock. Don't need no half-blind baggage-eating feed. Clay didn't respond. He just opened the gate. Dusty stepped forward, but stopped halfway. He looked back. June hadn't moved. The ranch hand clicked his tongue, coaxing. Come on, boy. Dusty backed up instead. The second hand tried the halter. Dusty flinched, turned, shoved sideways. Not hard. Not to hurt. But clear. He wasn't going. Stubborn son of a, Sutton muttered. Clay leaned on the gate. Try again. But don't force it. The second time they brought June closer, thinking maybe Dusty would go with her. But when they opened the gate for the mare, Dusty stepped in front of her. A wall. June stayed behind him, breathing hard, ears flat. The message was simple. Where one went, the other did too. Or not at all. It was 11 when the second truck came. Older man. White hat. Said he'd take the mare. Out of sentiment. Maybe put her down later. Save her the cold winter. Dusty let out a sharp whinny, teeth bared, when they opened the gate again. This time, Clay stepped in. He didn't say a word. He just looked at Dusty, then at June, then back at the men. Deal's off, he said. Sutton looked up. You serious? I said they're a pair. You want one, you take both. You won't get half the price. I don't want the price, Clay said and walked away. By sunset, the trucks were gone. The paddock was quiet again. Dusty stood with his head resting on June's withers. Her breath was slow, steady. She didn't know what almost happened, but he did. They stayed that way as the cold came back. Together. Still together. The first snow came 3 nights later, soft and silent. Clay Brixton stood in the barn doorway, rubbing the ache from his wrist where the cold had found old fractures. The storm wasn't fierce, just enough to powder the fields and blur the fences. In the far stall, Dusty lay curled near June, his flank pressed to hers, sheltering her from the draft that crept under the boards. Clay had filled the trough and thrown down fresh hay, but June barely touched it. She'd been slow all week, slower than usual. She still walked with Dusty, still nuzzled him when he leaned close, but her ribs stood sharper, and her steps carried a tremble. She was slipping. Clay knew the look. He'd seen it in cows, in old dogs, even in men. The body stays a little longer than it should, trying to follow a heart that's already tired. Dusty knew it too. He didn't leave her side. Not once. Clay considered calling the vet, or the man from Riverton who'd offered to handle her for free. But each time he picked up the phone, his hand wouldn't move. Instead, he brought blankets from the house, laid them over June's back and shoulders, tied down with old harness straps. Dusty watched him the whole time, unmoving, not with suspicion, with focus, as if watching made it real. At night, Clay slept in the loft above the stalls. He lit a small fire in the old barrel drum stove and kept it going with fence posts he no longer needed. Snow beat soft rhythms on the tin roof. Sometimes Dusty would shift in the dark below, his hooves clicking lightly against the stall boards. June barely made a sound. On the 4th morning, her breathing was shallow. Clay came down from the loft and knelt beside her. She was lying down now, her head resting on the straw. Dusty stood beside her like a statue, his head lowered, muzzle close to her ear. Clay reached out a hand and rested it on Dusty's neck. "She's close," he said, voice dry. Dusty didn't move. June exhaled long and slow. Silence. Dusty stepped forward, lowering his head to her cheek. He nudged her once, then again. Stillness. Clay turned away, blinking hard, lips pressed thin. Dusty laid down beside her, not touching, but near. An hour passed, then another. Eventually Clay stood, pulled the tarp from the far wall, and went outside to dig. The ground wasn't frozen yet, not deep. By the time he returned, Dusty was on his feet again. He stood beside June, not moving. Clay didn't rush. He walked slow, gave Dusty time. The horse stepped aside only when Clay knelt, lifted June's head gently, and wrapped her in the tarp. It took 2 trips with the sled to pull her to the small grove behind the barn. He buried her beneath the old cottonwood tree. Dusty followed the whole time. He didn't whinny, didn't buck or rear. He just watched. And when the last shovel of dirt was packed, and Clay leaned on the handle with sweat frozen on his brow, Dusty turned and walked back to the barn. Alone. That night, the barn felt too quiet. Clay sat by the fire, listening. No twin hoofbeats. No rustling straw where 2 horses once shifted in harmony. Just one. Dusty didn't lie down. He stood facing the empty stall. Hours passed. Finally, Clay came down from the loft. He didn't speak, didn't try to lead him away. He just opened the stall, stepped in, and leaned against the wall. Dusty didn't look at him. Clay waited a while, then finally spoke. "I know." He meant more than the words said. They sat like that until morning. The snow had stopped. The wind had died. A quiet fell across the ranch, not peaceful, not painful, just quiet, a new kind. And Dusty remained standing, facing the empty space where she used to be. 2 weeks passed. Dusty didn't eat much. He nibbled, drank enough to survive, but his eyes had dulled. He stood in the same part of the stall for hours, head low, ears still. Clay Brixton kept the stall clean, brought him the best hay he could afford, even brushed his coat each morning, but none of it reached Dusty. Something in him had stopped. Clay tried music, brought out an old radio, let it play while he worked. It only made the barn feel more hollow. He tried company, led Dusty out to the pasture, let him walk alone, but the horse always returned to the stall, the empty one. He'd rest his chin on the top rail, staring into nothing. On the 17th day, Clay got a call. It was from a man named Travis Dale. Lived 2 counties over, raised cutting horses. Said he'd heard Clay had a one-man gelding worth a look. Quiet, he said. Good bone. The kind you can trust. Clay didn't answer right away. 10,000, Travis added. In cash, if he rides clean. Clay stared at Dusty through the open barn door. The horse wasn't watching. He rarely did anymore. Bring a trailer, Clay said. They arrived the next morning. 2 men, one older than the other. The younger one had ropey arms and a hat that hadn't seen dirt. The older man had been around horses. He moved careful, didn't talk more than needed. Dusty didn't resist when Clay slipped the halter on. Didn't even blink when he was let out. The wind kicked up dust around their boots. Clay said nothing. You break him yourself, the old man asked. No, Clay replied. He just listens. They saddled Dusty, cinched him tight. He flinched once. The younger man mounted, testing balance. Don't push him, Clay warned. The rider clicked his tongue, tapped his heels. Dusty moved forward, slow and mechanical. No flare, no fire. Just obedience. They circled twice. He's broke, the younger man said. Dead broke, the old one muttered. They didn't notice Clay tense at the words. Dusty kept walking, ears unmoving, tail still. After 5 minutes, the rider dismounted. He'll work. The deal was made in folded bills, handed over without fanfare. Clay didn't count them. He didn't watch the trailer doors shut. He just turned and walked back toward the barn. He made it 10 steps before he stopped. Something deep in his chest curled tight. He'd sold cattle, dogs, even a saddle that had been with him 20 years. But this felt different. Behind him, Dusty hadn't moved. Not yet. Clay turned. The old man stood by the trailer, one hand on the ramp latch. Dusty stood next to it. Still. Then, for the first time in weeks, Dusty looked at Clay. Not past him. At him. It was a simple thing. A single turn of the head. But Clay felt it like a rope pulled taut across his ribs. Wait, Clay said. The younger man looked up from counting money. I can't do it, Clay said louder now. The 2 men glanced at each other. I'll buy him back. The old man squinted. You just sold him. I changed my mind. You ain't getting the 10 back. I don't want it back, Clay said, pulling out his wallet, flipping through bills. I'll pay more. You serious? The younger one asked, stepping forward. Clay handed him the 10,000, then added 500 more. Every dollar he had left. I'm serious. The old man studied him a second longer, then shrugged. He's yours. They turned and left without another word. Just dust and engine noise disappearing down the long drive. Clay walked to Dusty, held out a hand. Dusty stepped forward and pressed his nose into Clay's chest. No tricks. No commands. Just contact. Clay's throat went dry. He scratched behind Dusty's ear. She wouldn't want you alone either, he whispered. That night, he opened both stalls. Let Dusty decide where to rest. Dusty stood between them, eyes flicking from one side to the other. Then slowly, he walked into June's old stall. He laid down, not out of surrender, out of memory. Clay sat in the loft again, stove crackling. Below, the stall was no longer empty. Not entirely. and the silence no longer echoed. Weeks passed. Clay started waking earlier, sometimes before the light came. The barn had a different rhythm now, not one of habit, but of presence. Dusty no longer lingered at the gate or stared at the horizon. He ate again, drank more. His coat took on shine. His eyes lost that distant, hollow look. But every night, he still lay in June's old stall. He never stepped into his own. Clay didn't force it. Instead, he cleaned both every morning, like she might still walk through the pasture fence one day. Then, in the second week of October, a truck arrived at the end of Clay's road. No trailer, just two men in county tags. One in a pressed shirt, the other with a clipboard. They came slow, boots crunching over dry gravel. Clay met them at the fence. "You Clay Brixon?" the older one asked. He nodded. "We're with County AG Enforcement. We're here on an anonymous tip about improper animal containment and suspected neglect." Clay didn't move. "You're wasting your time. Mind if we take a look?" He didn't answer, just turned and led them to the barn. Dusty stood inside, calm but watchful. The younger man stepped forward, checked the stall, tapped a few notes into his phone. "Where's the second horse?" Clay said nothing. The older man looked up. "Sir, she's gone," Clay replied. "You mean dead?" "No," Clay said, his voice flat. "I mean someone stole her." That changed the air. Both men paused. The younger one lowered his phone. "When?" "Couple months back." "You reported?" "To who?" Clay asked. No one looked. No one came. The man nodded slowly, then stepped aside. "Still," he said, "we got to file it. It's procedure." And the complaint was specific. Said the horse in here had visible injuries, possible starvation. Clay clenched his jaw. He wasn't starved. He was grieving. "That may be," the man said, softer now. "But grief doesn't show up on paperwork. Vet's got to look him over. We'll have to get someone out here." Clay stared. "You plan on taking him?" "Not unless he's in danger." "He's not." The clipboard man gave a slow nod. "Then we'll be back in 48. Vet will check him. You got time to fix anything we might have missed." They left quietly. That night, Clay didn't light the stove. He sat outside, hood pulled up against the cold, watching the road. Dusty was quieter than usual. He paced a few times, then went still near the door. At midnight, Clay got up and walked the fence line. The sky was dark, stars sharp. Everything smelled dry. Dead leaves, brittle dirt, and horses. A scent not his. He followed it to the far edge of the pasture and stopped. There were tracks. Fresh ones. 2 sets. 1 horse. 1 human. Both too recent to be old. He crouched and touched the dirt. The hoof prints were small. June. Clay's heart thudded hard in his chest. He stood, scanned the trees, the darkness, the hills. Nothing. But she'd been here. He hurried back to the barn. Dusty had his head up, ears high. He knew it too. "She's out there," Clay said. Dusty nickered, sharp, urgent. Clay didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. By sunrise, he had a plan. He called a friend in the next county, Lisa Wilcox. Ran a shelter. She owed him a favor. He told her everything. The theft, the tracks, the inspectors. Her voice got tight when he mentioned the condition Dusty had been found in. "I'll make some calls," she said. "You do what you need to." He loaded the trailer. Hay, water, first aid, a tarp. He looked Dusty in the eyes. "You ready?" The gelding didn't blink. Clay opened the stall. Dusty walked into the trailer without a sound. Clay didn't bother calling anyone else. No sheriff. No local vet. No animal control. They'd already failed him once. He pointed the truck east, following old county roads that cut through yellow pasture and clusters of mesquite. Dusty stood calm in the trailer, But every so often Clay could hear him shift, paw once, then settle again. Lisa sent a pin drop to his phone. She'd heard from a woman near Wexler Junction, about 30 miles out. A woman who'd seen a white mare with blue eyes, tied behind a red pole barn. That was all Clay needed. By noon, he turned off the highway onto a dirt lane barely wide enough for the trailer. The tires bounced through potholes. Every fence post leaned. A rusted mailbox read Merkins. He killed the engine just shy of the house. It wasn't much. A sagging porch, peeling paint. The barn stood off to the right, red, just like Lisa said. Clay stepped out, leaving the truck running. He didn't knock. He walked straight to the barn. And there she was. June. She stood in a bare paddock behind sagging wire, her head low, flanked to the wind. Her mane was longer matted, her coat streaked with dried mud. But her eyes, blue and sharp, met his the second he stepped around the corner. She took one step forward. He stopped, hands open. "Hey, girl." A door slammed behind him. "Hey, what the hell you think you're doing?" Clay turned slowly. A man in overalls stood on the porch, a phone in one hand, a cigarette in the other. Clay didn't flinch. "That's my horse." The man laughed once. "She was found on my property. That makes her mine now. Found property law. That horse was stolen. No proof of that. She's branded. Right flank. CBX. The man hesitated. Clay took a step closer to the wire. June didn't back away. "She's not yours," Clay said. "You don't even know her name." The man pointed the phone at him. "I'm calling the sheriff." "You do that." They stood in silence. Behind them, Dusty let out a long, piercing whinny from the trailer. The sound cut through the air like a blade. June's ears flicked up, and then she answered, a broken, strained whinny that carried the weight of weeks. Dusty called again. June stepped forward, pressed against the wire. Clay didn't move. The man on the porch dropped the cigarette. "Fine," he muttered. "Take her. She won't even eat. Damn thing's half wild." Clay didn't say thank you. He didn't speak at all. He walked back to the trailer, opened the gate, and let Dusty out. The gelding didn't need instructions. He moved like a ghost, straight toward the paddock, head high, eyes locked on June. She whinnied again, louder now. He trotted the last few steps, pulled up short at the fence. Clay opened the gate. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder. Dusty nosed her neck, her ribs, her face. She leaned into him like gravity pulled her there. Clay turned, walked back to the truck, and pulled out the vet kit. He didn't speak to the man on the porch again. He worked quietly. Water first, then a few slices of apple. Salve for the worst cuts. Brushed her down as best he could with a coarse rag. June didn't flinch. Dusty stayed beside her the whole time. When she was stable enough, Clay led them both into the trailer. No fight, no hesitation. Just trust, worn thin but still there. By the time they were back on the road, the sun was dropping fast. The cab filled with the low rattle of tires on dirt. He didn't turn on the radio. Didn't need to. He drove in silence, hands steady on the wheel. Behind him, two horses stood pressed together, closer than flesh and blood. They didn't look back. By the time Clay pulled into the ranch, the last of the light had drained from the sky. A cold wind had picked up, crawling down from the mountains and sweeping across the open land like it had something to prove. Dusty was the first to step out of the trailer. June hesitated, legs stiff, nostrils flaring at the familiar scent of old hay and home. Then she followed, head low, brushing her flank against Dusty's, sighed like she needed the contact, just to keep moving. Clay led them past the paddocks and into the old barn, his boots crunching over straw and dry dirt. The air inside was warmer, stale with wood and horse and years of sweat soaked into the beams. He opened the largest stall, clean, with a thick layer of bedding and a fresh water bucket, and stepped back. They walked in together. No rope needed. Clay stood a moment, watching them settle. Dusty dropped his head into the hay, like nothing had ever gone wrong. June stayed close to the wall, drinking deep and slow. Her ribs still showed, her coat still dull, but her eyes were clear now, alert, a little wary, a little proud. He latched the stall door gently and made his way back to the house. Inside, Lisa sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and 2 empty coffee cups. She looked up when the screen door creaked. "Well, she's here." Lisa let out a breath. "Good. She's bad off," Clay added. "But she'll come around." Lisa didn't speak right away. Then she pushed the notebook toward him. "Vet's coming in the morning. I called Carla, too. She said she'll come check the hooves. That guy didn't do a damn thing for her." Not surprised. Clay didn't sit. He paced once, then looked toward the window, facing the barn. Lisa watched him. "You're not planning to sell them anymore, are you?" He didn't answer right away. "I thought I had to," he said finally. "Too much land, not enough hands. I figured, let them go before they fade out slow." Lisa nodded. "And now?" Clay looked back at her. "Now I think I was trying to sell the only thing left that still knew me." Lisa's throat tightened. She looked away. They didn't talk about her leaving 5 years ago. Didn't talk about her coming back. But both knew it wasn't just about the horses anymore. Outside, a low thump echoed from the barn. Clay opened the door and stepped onto the porch. Lisa followed. Dusty and June were moving in slow circles, stretching, shifting weight, brushing against each other like they couldn't believe they were real. "Some things don't need fixing," Clay muttered. "They just need to not be torn apart." Lisa crossed her arms, her breath forming white ribbons in the air. "You think we can keep them?" "We don't own them," Clay said. "Not really. But we can protect them." He nodded. Inside the barn, June finally lowered herself into the straw. Dusty stood beside her, legs planted, head high, ears twitching. Lisa reached for the porch light and flicked it off. No need to disturb them. The land stretched out beyond the barn, dark and quiet and wide. Somewhere far off, a coyote called once, then fell silent. Clay sat on the porch step, elbows on knees. Lisa sat beside him. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. 2 horses rested in the barn, tired, scarred, still breathing, still together. And that, for now, was enough. The next morning brought gray skies and the promise of early frost. The kind of air that made old bones ache and younger ones pay attention. Clay was already in the barn when the vet's truck pulled up, white, dusty, and rumbling like it had somewhere better to be. Dr. Fay Hollander climbed out. She was in her 60s, all sharp eyes and tighter words. Carried her vet bag, like it weighed nothing. She gave Clay a nod, then stepped inside the barn without waiting for an invite. "They're in the back stall," Clay said, following her. "The mare's worse off." "I figured." Her voice was flat, efficient. June stood when they approached. Her legs wobbled but held. Dusty stepped between them for a moment, eyes steady on Fay. She paused. "He's protective. They've been through hell together." She crouched slow, speaking softly to June. No sugar in her voice, just even tones and calm movements. Within minutes, she had her hands on June's flanks, checking the wounds. Some were raw, others scabbed wrong. She worked with quiet focus, while Clay held the lead rope. "Someone used her," she said after a minute. "Hard, pulled, overworked, and half-starved. But she's a fighter." Clay gave a slow nod. "We saw that." Fay stepped back. "I've treated worse. She'll need a few weeks, at least. Maybe more. What about her staying here?" Fay gave him a look. "You trying to make her yours?" "I don't care about papers. I just want her safe." Fay tilted her head. You'll need to talk to animal control. If no one claims her, they'll release her to a foster. With your record, that could be you." Clay said nothing. He knew the process, knew it'd take time. Lisa came into the barn halfway through the checkup, carrying a bucket of warm oats. She didn't speak, just stood nearby, watching. When Dusty stepped closer to her, she scratched behind his ears, without thinking. He leaned into it. "He remembers you," Clay said. Lisa glanced at him. He never forgot anything. After the vet left, Clay spent the next hour fixing the loose boards in the stall. June lay down again, not from pain now, but rest. Dusty stood near her the whole time, unmoving. That afternoon, a truck from animal control arrived. A man in a uniform and a clipboard stepped down. He was young, polite, and firm. Asked questions, took photos, walked the barn, saw June, saw Dusty. "Technically, the mare's still considered unclaimed," he said. "If no owner shows in 72 hours, she's eligible for transfer." "To who?" Clay asked. "You can apply, but there'll be forms. Site check, vet reference." Lisa handed him a manila folder. "Done. All of it." The man blinked. "Already? We don't wait around out here," she said. He smiled. "All right then." That night, the wind picked up hard. Gusts rattled the barn walls. Clay stood outside, staring into the dark, arms crossed. Inside the barn, June pressed her head against Dusty's neck. Not leaning, just touching. Just enough to say, "I'm still here." And Dusty didn't move. 3 days passed without a single call or inquiry. No missing horse reports. No owners stepping forward. Nothing but silence. Something Clay had learned to treat as both a warning and a relief. On the morning of the 4th day, Lisa got the call. The mare was theirs, officially. She said nothing at first, just hung up the phone and walked out to the barn. Clay found her there 20 minutes later, sitting on a hay bale beside June. Dusty stood nearby, chewing slowly on a flake of alfalfa, ears swiveling in lazy half-circles. "She's ours now," Lisa said without looking up. They faxed the release forms. Clay leaned against the stall gate. "You all right with that?" Lisa rubbed her hands together like she was trying to warm them. "I think I needed something to take care of." June shifted her weight slightly, groaning low in her throat. The sound was raw but alive. Later that day, Clay walked the back pasture alone. He'd cleared the fencing weeks ago, but never bothered to check it. Now he traced the edges with new eyes, scanning for weaknesses, loose wire, anything that might let a horse stray. He didn't realize he wasn't alone until he heard Lisa's voice behind him. "They'll try to buy them." Clay turned. "Who?" "Wilkins. Jenkins. All the bastards who treat animals like machines. They'll hear we've got her and come sniffing around." "She's not for sale." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Didn't say you'd sell. Said they'd try." That night, the wind changed. The warm kind. The kind that rolled down from the mountains, tugging at trees and shifting the dust in long, low curls. Clay lay awake in the dark, listening to the creak of the rafters. Sometime past midnight, headlights cut across the side of the barn. Not fast, not reckless, just slow and careful, as if whoever it was wanted to be seen, but not identified. Clay was out the door in under a minute, rifle in hand. By the time he reached the drive, the truck was already pulling away. He caught a glimpse, an older Ford, maybe gray or silver, with one busted tail light. He didn't bother chasing it. The next morning, they found a fresh scratch on the barn door. Not a word, no message, just a single deep gouge in the wood, like someone had dragged a sharp hook or metal tool across it. Lisa ran her hand over it. "They're testing us." "Let them." But Clay knew better. He knew that kind of quiet warning. Knew it came from men who didn't bark, they bit. He doubled the fencing that afternoon, reinforced the stall latches, installed 2 trail cams facing the drive. Lisa didn't question it. She brought coffee instead. The horses, unaware of the threat that lingered beyond the fence line, spent the day in the pasture. Dusty moved with the slow, protective calm of an old soldier. June never strayed far. Her ribs were filling in now, her wounds scabbed over. They grazed near the east fence when the clouds began to gather. Not a storm, just a warning sky. Dim and unsettled. Clay leaned against the barn, arms crossed, watching them. Lisa joined him after a while. "They really don't leave each other," she said. "They've earned that." "Think it was always this way?" "What?" "This bond. This kind of loyalty." Clay thought about it, then shook his head. "No, it's forged. Pain times survival, that's what does it." Lisa nodded once, silent. A crow cawed from the distance. The wind pushed through the grass. And just beyond the fence, the silver Ford sat again, far enough to not be trespassing, but close enough to make a point. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shot had been fired. The Ford didn't show the next day, or the one after. But Clay didn't relax. He kept the rifle loaded, the cameras running, and the horses close. Lisa started sleeping with her boots near the door. 3 days of quiet can be worse than one of noise. It builds pressure, and Clay could feel it, like something large holding its breath. June was healing. That was the good part. Her coat was still patchy, but the shine had started to return. Her ribs weren't as sharp, and she no longer flinched when someone walked behind her. Dusty stayed close. They grazed together, moved together, even slept side by side in the pasture when the night was warm. Lisa took to riding the fence line every morning on a borrowed quarter horse from the next farm over. "Better eyes from a saddle," she said. Clay didn't argue. He appreciated the patrols. They'd become necessary. On the 4th morning, she came back early. "There's tire tracks near the creek," she said. "Not ours. Wide ones. Dual axle. Somebody brought a trailer through the back route." Clay didn't speak for a moment. "You think they were going to try to take her?" she asked. "No," he said slowly. "I think they were waiting to see if she'd wander." Lisa clenched her jaw. She didn't. Not yet. He spent the rest of the day reinforcing the rear property line, welded new posts into the rocky ground, added chain link to the old barb sections, and topped it with tension wire. Lisa held the fence taut while he worked, sweat streaking down both their faces. "You know," she said while they broke for water, "we could move them. Somewhere farther." "Won't matter," Clay said. "They'll follow. They want the mare." Lisa tilted her head. "Why?" "Because she got away." That night, Clay set up a small floodlight near the barn. Lisa sat by the window with a pair of binoculars and a notebook. Neither of them slept much. At 2:18 a.m., the trail cam triggered. They were outside in under 30 seconds. A man stood by the fence line, mid-40s, clean boots, worn jeans, no jacket despite the cold. A cigarette glowed between his fingers. Clay raised the rifle, not yet aiming. "You lost?" he asked. The man smiled, an empty kind of smile. "You got something that belongs to my employer." Lisa stepped beside Clay. "Not anymore." "She's not branded," the man said. "She's registered now," Lisa replied. "Shelter papers went through last week." He flicked the cigarette onto the ground. "We'll see about that." Clay didn't flinch. "You come back here again. You won't walk away." The man stared at them for a few seconds. Then he turned, walked back to a dark truck idling just beyond the tree line, and disappeared into the early morning haze. Lisa waited until they were gone to exhale. "You think he's bluffing?" "No." The next morning, they moved the horses into the upper barn, the one with the locking gates and reinforced doors. Lisa stayed with them while Clay went into town. He needed help. Old friends at the feed store. Ranchers he hadn't spoken to in years. A sheriff's deputy who owed him a favor. He didn't give names or details. Just said, "Someone's trying to take what ain't theirs." He got what he needed. Eyes, ears, and quiet support. When he came back that evening, Lisa was brushing June. The mare stood still, eyes half closed, while Dusty paced the stall like a guard dog. "They're scared," Lisa said quietly. "Not of us. Of what's coming." Clay walked over, pressed a hand to June's flank. "So are we. But we won't run." "No," he agreed. "We won't." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming, real and otherwise. Inside the barn, two horses stood together, side by side, and nothing short of force would ever separate them again. The storm hit before dawn. Wind slammed into the hills like a hammer, bending trees and snapping branches. Lightning flared in the clouds without rain, dry and sharp, casting twisted shadows across the field. Clay was already awake, boots laced, rifle by the door. Lisa came down from the loft. "They're coming tonight," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded once. Dusty and June were locked in the upper barn, both restless. June paced. Dusty kicked the stall door every few minutes. They felt it too, whatever was coming. By 3:17 a.m., headlights cut across the far pasture. Two trucks. No plates. Covered in dust. One had a trailer. "They're not sneaking this time," Lisa muttered. "No reason to," Clay said. "They think we won't fight." They stood at the edge of the barn's interior, near the door. Clay held the rifle low, loaded. Lisa had the old revolver tucked at her hip. Engines cut. Doors opened. 4 men stepped out. The leader was the same one from before, smiling without warmth. He walked up the gravel path like he owned it. "You had your time," he called. "We're taking the mare." "No," Clay said. Behind him, Dusty let out a short, furious neigh, loud enough to startle the night. The man motioned. 2 others stepped forward with ropes. Lisa fired a warning shot into the ground. Everyone froze. "That was your only one," she said. "Try it, and you'll find out what the second shot is for." The leader raised a hand. "Easy. No need for violence. We've got money." "No one's selling," Clay said. "Then you're stealing." He stepped closer. "And I don't think you want what comes with that." Lightning cracked behind them. Clay's voice didn't change. "Try me." The standoff stretched. The barn door creaked. Dusty was slamming it now, hooves battering the reinforced wood. June's cries joined his, sharp, desperate. The sound sent a chill through Lisa's spine. The men hesitated. "Wrong horses to pick a fight with," Clay said. Suddenly, Dusty's stall gate gave way. Wood splintered. A second crash, and the barn door shuttered. The bolt snapped off. The stallion didn't wait. He surged into the open, eyes wild, ears pinned back. His body moved like a hammer thrown downhill. The men scattered. One dove into the trailer. Another tripped and scrambled behind the truck. Dusty reared, hooves pounding the dirt, screaming. June followed, thin but fast, running hard. She didn't look back. Clay and Lisa stood aside as the 2 horses bolted past, into the open fields, toward the back range. The storm lit their path. By the time the men recovered, it was too late. "They're gone," Lisa said. The leader stared into the dark. "We'll find them." "No," Clay said. "You won't." Police were already on the way. Lisa had called them the moment the trucks crossed the fence. Backup arrived minutes later. The men didn't fight it. They knew when they'd lost. By dawn, the trucks were gone. The trailer impounded. The sun rose over quiet hills. Clay stood at the back fence, staring out. "You think they'll come back?" Lisa asked. He didn't answer right away. Just listen. In the distance, beyond the ridge, a faint sound echoed. 2 horses running. I think they're where they need to be, he said. Later, weeks later, Lisa would ride out and find them. Dusty and June, side by side, near the river bend. Wild now. Free. She didn't approach. She just watched. Some bonds don't break, no matter how hard the world tries to pull them apart. Some run deeper than fear. Some are love,